Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fine Watches podcast. This is episode 5 of season 2. We made it to episode 5. Lewis,
So good.
It's all happening, indeed. So this week, there's been a few things happening in watches, but my what happened in the last fortnight has got to be waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to my dogs waking me up and an email from MB&F.
Oh, yes.
Got it in the raffle. Got it in the raffle.
Nice.
So I placed an order for a red Mad 1 and so excited to get it. Like, okay, they used the Miyota movement or whatever, but
it doesn't matter.
Other than that, if it was a internally produced MB&F movement, that would still be $150,000 watch, and you can debate whether, that's ridiculous or not in principle, but, for under $5,000 Australian, that is just a ridiculous little piece of watchmaking history. You asked me if I was sort of planning to flip it, and my simple answer to that is no. Like, am I going to keep it forever? It's a pretty big piece. It's not really a practical wear or whatever, but I just feel like, for what I bought it for, until I need money to put food on the table, I'll probably hang on to it because it's really cool.
Awesome.
And I'm not. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but I think flipping is not the best of conduct. But anyway, so what have you? What was it this week first?
I'm just going to say that at least one of us in this podcast is going to be professional today. So Ben's so excited about his MB&F that he forgot that we don't start this show with what's happened in watches and what's got you excited. But he's so excited, he forgot. What is on your wrist?
Wrist check. I know. I got halfway through the story and I was like, oh my God, I forgot the wrist check. So on
so excited, he barely got through the good mornings and he was like, I've got an MB&F.
So well, it's an MB&F. I reckon that's cool. if you're gonna be super excited about anything, it's an MB&F, no?
That's so funny.
So on my wrist today, I finally succumbed. No, I'm gonna tell the truth. I finally got someone who has some sort of magical ability to get me one, because I've walked into Swatch 100 times. I really only like one of the moon swatches, and today I'm wearing my Mars moon swatch.
Oh, nice.
The reason I like the Mars over any of the others is the Alaska Project Speedy. Very rare model, very hard to get, very expensive these days, but super cool with those sort of wedge-shaped hour and minute indicators.
Okay.
And I think that this one, I'm definitely going to change the band because I'm not a huge fan of the Velcro thing. But
are you going to do the rubber? Are you going to do the fitted rubber that we keep seeing online on Instagram everyone doing?
White or red? I thought either the rubber or I'll find a white and red NATO or a NATO with white and red details.
I'll have a look because I've got a drawer full of NATOs and stuff that just get handed in and things with trades. So I'll have a look for you. Now I know that you've got that. That's cool. Nice.
Yeah. So that's me. I think that, my sort of overall impression of them is, look, for $400, it's, if you don't have a Speedy and you're not going to get one soon, it's not an alternative to a Speedy, but it's got enough of that beautiful pure design that it's a really nice watch. For $400, it's cool. Yeah,
I think that
it's not an MB&F red Mad one though, for sure.
They're junk, but they're junk that you want. They're terrible watches. Let's be honest. There's nothing good about the build quality or anything you hear. It's terrible, but you want one. I want one. I walked in a Swatch in Sydney this week, and the guy treated me like I was less than dirt on his shoe for asking for a Saturn. I was like, man, you got one? He had the whole box set. I said, can I buy a Saturn? No, we don't have them. We just don't even, we don't know when they come. He's just lying to me. We don't know when our orders come. So you don't know when deliveries come to a store? Come on. He's just lying to me. I said, well, can I buy the whole box set you've got sitting there in the window? No, you can't do that. So, all right, cool. See you later. I want one. They're terrible, but I want one.
I just before we move on to your wrist, I've got such mixed feelings about this whole thing. First of all, for as a watch enthusiast, I think it's cool. Like the product itself is just marketing genius. Like when it is the biggest watch launch of all time. Like name any other watch where there have been lines around blocks. Never.
In public, to like the biggest public non-watch person.
Unbelievable. But it also means that before, when you could walk into a swatch shop, it was a feel-good place. You'd pick up a nice little thing for $100, get a bit of joy out of wearing the cool coloured little watch on your wrist or whatever, and turned it into like a Louis Vuitton store where you have to line up and there's a security guard and, they're doing you a favour.
There was a security guard. You're right. There was a security guard out the front of the Sydney Swatch. There's nothing in there.
Telling stories about, this and that we can't get, and maybe if you, know the Prince of Persia or whatever, no. So what have you got on your wrist today?
Right, yeah. So today we're talking Rolex, and so I figured it was appropriate to grab my only, well, not my only, that's silly, I have a president, my only sports watch in the Rolex catalogue that I own. So this is a Submariner, but I did something to it that is blasphemy, I think technically to people like yourself, this is blasphemy, but fuck you, I don't care, I love it. I'll show you, I'll see if I get the camera to go. So if you're on YouTube, guys, Fine Watches podcast on YouTube, you'll start to see some pretty nice sparkles right about now. We offer a custom sort of handset range of watches, and so this was my personal piece that we did basically as a test.
So you didn't nick that off DJ Khaled?
This is my Wiz Khalifa. No,
it's the Wiz Khalifa. The Rolex watch dealer's Wiz Khalifa edition. Yeah,
it's a 114060. So previous gen ceramic sub. It's set basically down the mid links with diamond, and then the bezel is square cut diamond with square cut black diamonds for the hour markers. Don't do the whole case, so it's just lugs, bezel, and mid links. It's one of those things where, let me set this camera back. Yep. Oh, I did a Tim Mosso. I quite like the custom stuff that we've done for the Datejust and things. They're quite nice, but they're a bit too much for me. And so I wanted to have something a little bit more toned down. So I've got a diamond Submariner. But no, it's just a bit of fun. Like, for me, it's a bit of fun. I enjoy wearing it. It's a great piece. It looks cool to me. I know it's for most watch guys, and I'll probably get killed in the comments, but bring it. Come at me. It's my watch, and I love it.
I've seen this watch in person, and I must say that what I do like is the black gems in the bezel kind of soften it off a little bit. It's not so icy, and it's it's cool. It's
I really like it
for that style.
And so you can do
quite nicely done.
Like you see guys who do subs and Datejust and things, like we sell them. Like we sell them where you have the full bust down diamonds everywhere, Wiz Khalifa special. And there's a market for it, and people love that, and all power to you. That's great. They're cool. This is an intermediary of that. It's an intermediate step. So I'm really happy with it. It's awesome. It hasn't really left my wrist since you saw it a couple of weeks ago. It's just a nice watch. I enjoy wearing it. Fits well. Adds a bit of sparkle to my life.
Lovely. Very nice. And in this week, this fortnight in watches for you?
Yeah, right. So back on track. Well, so yeah, like one of the stories was going to be that I went to Swatch and got treated like absolute shit, and that was quite funny. But the other one was a release. There's a release that came out, and I have a bit of a soft spot for this watch, for this brand. So that's the new Daniel Roth, or Daniel Roth, ROTH. So if you haven't seen this, guys, it's the new Tourbillon Souscription, because we're French. It's 20 pieces, 140, 50, or 200,000 Swiss francs or something ridiculous. It's a gold Daniel Roth standard case, similar to like the Symphony case from Roger Dubuis. Tourbillon, guilloche dial, absolutely gorgeous. But what I really like about this, and I think is interesting, especially in our line of work, being dealers, is the rise of Louis Vuitton in the watchmaking industry. So Louis Vuitton, obviously the LVMH group, they own some huge brands, but they've taken Daniel Roth and basically made it a mission of theirs to bring it back. And Daniel wrote is haute horology, classic wristwatch design. Think George Daniels, think Roger Dubuis, think that kind of thing, or vintage Roger Dubuis, not Excalibur Roger Dubuis. So what they've done is they've handed this watch to the team that did the Carpe Diem. So you remember this one? This is the one with the snake crawling through the skull, the Louis Vuitton Carpe Diem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this small group basically have taken this and made something just gorgeous. So keep your eye out for Louis Vuitton in the future and some serious watchmaking balls on display from that group. And it might now be that they're doing it through both Louis Vuitton and Daniel Roth, which is really cool to me. I love seeing those fashion brands actually pull out some stops and get some cool stuff. I
actually have always quite liked the Louis Vuitton Tambour range.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily my personal style, but I think that, they're sort of, there's something a little bit different. They're immediately identifiable. They use some really cool, fonts and color combinations and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I think for me, I spoke about this in my conversation with Barbara Palumbo in the audio series of season 1. And, I sort of made this flippant comment that I don't often like watches that are not made by watch companies, like the watches that are made by, sort of fashion brands.
Fashion brands, right?
And she very, very rightly pointed out that, there have been some really amazing, look at Cartier, which is obviously a jewelry brand.
Yes.
Gucci have made some really, really interesting stuff with their jump hour watches and things like that.
Last episode we talked, I mentioned the Hermes, the slim, the Luna.
Indeed. So, look, there are certainly some really special offerings. I personally have a Mont Blanc Geosphere with the one with the two.
Yeah, they're cool.
Loom globe top southern and northern hemispheres, which I think is, if it was a watchmaking brand, it'd be much more
twice the price. Yeah, and Mont Blanc themselves, a pen company that have teamed up with Minerva. One of the most historically significant chronograph makers ever. And that Minerva are now part of Mont Blanc. So yeah, I think it's nice to see. It's nice to hear you actually pull away from that stance of watches are for watch brands, because when you drill into it, most of those watch brands are owned by fashion companies. LVMH.
They certainly are now.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
It would make sense that Tag Heuer is part of that. Tag Heuer Heuer specifically is a watch brand, but now they're a fashion company essentially. And seeing the Tambour range, which is where that Carpe Diem comes from. They did the Mexican wrestler Luchador as well. There's some really cool stuff. Hermes with the Luna. We've got an Hermes in store. It's a slim Hermes. It's a micro rotor, a proper micro rotor. It's really cool to see this stuff. So I like hearing that you say that, because I used to have the same sort of thought process of watches are for watch brands, until I think I sort of started to look into it and think, well, actually, a lot of these fashion brands are doing some really cool stuff. And I think Gucci might have been the one that really turned me to it with their jump hour stuff.
I've always liked the Chanel J12, especially sort of the original ones with the AP movements in them. Okay, they're a little bit Rado, being all ceramic or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the Rado Diastar yesterday, and God, that's a pretty iconic design. And nice accessible watch for people. But
we sell a lot of J12s to women. It's a good gateway drug. I don't know if I can say drug on YouTube, but I just did. So cheers. It's a good gateway into watches for a lot of women, is the J12. So it's a cool piece.
Indeed, lovely watch. Speaking of lovely watches, our theme for this conversation is: should I buy a Rolex in 2023? And I put a lot of thought into this one, because it's an interesting question, and I think that I've got to lead off by saying my answer is yes, for sure.
Yes, Ben, you good guy. One for the good guys. You should
I'll explain why my answer is yes, though. So I think that Rolex over the last couple of years, and I think this is probably uncontested evidence here, is that Rolex over the last couple of years has enjoyed the brand itself has enjoyed a very, very big spike in interest and demand, and therefore pricing for a small range of its sport models. And arguably, it just got to a ridiculous point. And
I don't think that's arguable. It did. It was
and I think that if the reason I say yes is simply this, it comes with a small qualification. Yes, but buy it right. So if you are, there are a lot of ways to get into all of the models of Rolex without having to pay out on the bubble tax, which is still around. So don't try and buy one that someone with an AD relationship has bought and then is just selling 2 weeks later, because you're going to overpay. But look at some older models that might have been loved a little bit. Often they can polish up beautifully. They're arguably the same watch. I mean, in terms of if you want a ceramic dial one, get one with a ceramic dial, or whatever. But don't overpay, but buy them right. So that's my broad answer.
Okay, I like that. I like that, and I'm probably similar to you in that respect. It's like, I like Rolex. It's not my favorite brand. I think they do some. I think it's hard to argue against the fact that they do some of the best wearable designs in all of watches. So a Submariner looks like a Submariner looks like a Submariner, no matter throughout history. The continuity of Rolex is astounding, and I think that's because the designs are as almost perfect to what they're supposed to be. So a dive watch, you think of a Submariner. If you think, oh, I want a dive watch, Submariner is what comes to your head, and then from there you go into things that look like Submariners, like you go into Blancpain, 50 Fathoms, you go into Sea Masters and things like that. If you think of a Rolex Datejust, I mean, you can grab a Rolex Datejust from the 50s, 60s, and it's as recognizable as a Datejust as something from yesterday. So there's something to be said for that. If you're buying a Rolex, you're buying into the brand of Rolex and the look and the feel. And as much as you want to sort of set your ego aside, it does matter. So I think what I would say is, yes, you should buy a Rolex in 2023. Again, if you buy it right. And that's always the key. But if you want to buy a watch that's been flipped because you physically cannot get hold of that watch, I don't really think it's for us to tell you that's a bad decision. I don't think I should say, well, you're contributing to the fall of the watch industry and the hobby because you're buying from flippers. I think Rolex is as much to blame for that as the public buying them, as dealers selling them, as all of that ecosystem. There is not one thing to blame. But there are Rolexes I would recommend you buy in 2023. And I think vintage is always something you should consider with Rolex, and buying 4-digit references and 5-digit reference Rolexes is a way that your money is fairly safe, is a way that you're getting the look for a lot less. So on Ben's point, yes, you're going to pay a flipper tax, basically, when you buy a 2022, 2023 Rolex now. But if you want a Datejust, you can get a Datejust for under $7,000, under $8,000.
You can get a Datejust for $2,000. Some older ones.
Yeah, you'll find something. You will find something.
And the service and a polish, they'll be amazing.
Exactly. So, and that's the beauty of Rolex to me, is that you don't have to buy the brand new one unless you want specifically that brand new one. Like perhaps you want that dial, perhaps you want that configuration. But if you just want a Rolex on your wrist in 2023, now's a great time to do it, because those prices we saw last year do not exist. I mean, last year you're looking at green olive day dates in rows for close to 100,000 Aussie dollars. Now, below 80, 60, sometimes you can even see, like almost retail. So now's a good time to buy those things, I would say.
Yeah, I think I think this goes to. I mean, you've touched on an issue here around the flippers and that not being a great part of the market. I mean, going back to the Mad One, I saw someone trying to flip their
Oh.
email with the buying code on eBay so he hasn't even bought the watch yet, and he's trying to make some money out of having won the Mad One raffle. So
We
to me
we
that
had a
was
we had a so-called dealer. It was basically a backplat flipper who found himself into a WhatsApp group who did the same thing. He
yeah
tried to say, "Hey, I've got this watch. It's brand new, unworn, 2023. Who wants it?" And then everyone's like, "Mate, they're not even. You're selling a raffle ticket. Shut up."
yeah yeah. So I think we've talked about that part of the market enough that we don't have to give them more air. But leaving that whole thing aside completely, I think that the thing about Rolex to me is that, and the unfortunate thing with the hype that sort of happened over the last couple of years is that Rolex is, and I've been accused on this podcast of being a hater, but I'm not a hater at all. Like I think that I'll go on record as saying I think that Rolex is one of, if not the best commercial mass-produced watchmakers in the world and has
Yeah,
enjoyed that position for a very long time. They, you only have to see how many there are out there that were, gifts from companies for long service. There's the Domino's ones, which I think are kind of cool with the little
they
Domino's
are cool.
on the front of it. And so they've represented quality and reliability for so long, and with good reason, because they're pretty much bulletproof. You can bang them around. The case designs, materials, and everything are
Fill
designed
them full of
for.
diamonds. They just last.
They are designed for practical everyday wear. And when you cut to the heart of this science or this art form that we love, at the end of the day, that's what a watch is for, is to be on your wrist and tell the time. And whether you're, an office worker sitting there not banging it around, or, someone working on an oil rig, you still need to be able to tell the time. And okay, now there's G-Shocks and all that. But, Rolex was known as a watch you could wear on an oil rig and bang it around and it'll keep going. And
Yeah.
that to me is fantastic. And then you touched on the designs, and I meant we touched on that in our unlimited collection last week, where last episode, where neither of us included one just because there are so many good ones that you don't have to pay ridiculous money to have a great Rolex. And I think that that's the point, is that Rolex is such a ubiquitous thing that having one and owning one is a great idea. You're going to really enjoy having it. You're going to get reliable service out of it, as long as it's looked after in the most basic sense, and you can't go wrong. But again, it's the other side of that is that it's the most lusted after brand. And I find that, and this is where, hit me in the comments for sure, but I find that the people who are most behind the hype of it are often the people who don't actually understand why the brand is so special. They're just chasing the crown rather than really buying into the history and pedigree of what it is that they're buying, which is unfortunate, because I think there's a lot to appreciate there.
I tend to agree with that sentiment to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, I deal with a lot of people who are flipping out of the AD. It's just sort of the nature of the beast with us. But what I have noticed really specifically in the last 6 months, 9 months, where the market's come down and stabilized again, a lot of those guys who were in 2021, 2022, chasing the money, chasing the just get anything out of the AD and sell it, flip it, make a grand, make 2 grand, that's disappearing. And we're sort of hitting this nice little sweet spot again, which I love, of the things that should be readily available because not really many people want them are again readily available. And so a lot of the flippers aren't profiting off of your two-tone 36mm Datejusts, which that's how it always used to be. It always used to be that there was a game to be played with Rolex, and I hate this game, but it exists and it's the way of the world, so fuck it, that's part of it. But you used to buy the 36mm two-tone to get your name up the list to get the Daytona, because the Daytona ceramic has never been publicly available. It's always been waitlisted. And then that trickled into GMTs, into Submariners, into Yacht Masters, and all the rest of it. Now, two-tone 36mm, even some 41s, are available again, so the flippers can't flip them. And when they flip them, they're getting less than retail. But the whole idea was you flipped it to get some of your money back so that you could get the call and just keep playing the game. And I quite like that we're going back to that. It gives me a little bit more hope that perhaps we'll get back to, you might get a Submariner in 3 months. You might, I don't think they're going to be readily available, for general public in sports models for a very long time. But it's nice to see that some of the less desirable models are coming back, and those flippers, especially the guys who aren't really into the hobby and were just looking for dollars, they're disappearing. And I mean, we're even seeing that on the dealer side of things, is those guys who got into the hobby to make the quick buck on Rolex and couldn't tell you a no date from a date, ceramic from a non-ceramic, to save their lives. They're just drowning out there because there's no free cash anymore. And I quite like that. It's the hobby's being retaken, and I quite like that.
I think though, I think there's a nuance in what you're saying that I might disagree with a little bit, which is that I think that the flippers wouldn't exist and the market and the prices wouldn't exist if there wasn't an end market for this. So if there wasn't, like, if the flipper couldn't flip the two-tone Datejust or day date and then, then be in line for something else, then they wouldn't be able to do it to climb that chain. And I think the problem is that there are people out there who want those watches, but there was this silly game happening with the flippers that denied them that. So they couldn't just go in and buy one. And I think that it comes back to just, I think, a little bit of perspective. So if we take our, trader and dealer hats off, and our sort of lucky position hats off to have some of the watches that we've got and all that sort of stuff, and just go back to the guy who's about to drop, 6, 7, 8, 10 grand, 2,000 on a second-hand one, for whom that's a big purchase and they've always wanted, an Oyster Perpetual or, just a Rolex of some sort. I think that's the bit that's always bothered me about this whole thing, is that it just became a game of numbers and bravado, as opposed to people actually genuinely appreciating the intrinsic thing that made Rolex so special, which is the quality and pedigree of the watches they make and the brand that they are. And so that was my problem, is that it became so far removed from that Rolex could, and they didn't, to their credit, but Rolex could put out any rubbish and lose their quality, like, arguably some brands, old, venerable.
In fact, they probably went the other way. They released new movements. They upgraded power reserves. They did put a little bit of effort into making that, trying to maintain that. So that was good on their part, and I think that's important to know.
Absolutely, but that's why I say, that. But then, so it's from that standpoint that I make my overall, yes, you should buy a Rolex in 2023, which is that any Rolex that you buy that is an operational watch that's in, some sort of wearable condition is a very, very special watch, and you should be happy to own it, and or satisfied, fulfilled, whatever the word is that you want to use, because you're wearing something of great quality. But there's also a danger that the other one that blew me away during the sort of peak of the Rolex mania is people who had a Batman, who lusted after a root beer, who had a Hulk, that wanted a Kermit, who wanted a, whatever it is, like, the different colors. Look, if you can afford a whole stack of different colors, good on you, for sure. And enjoy that.
Do it. Yeah.
And enjoy that for sure. But there was this sort of, it was like the Beanie Babies. People just went bananas over this thing that was
I called it the
meaningless.
Pokemon syndrome.
Yeah,
You got to
Pokemon,
catch
just
them all.
meaningless, just
Yeah,
meaningless. And it's just, if you're a collector of Rolex and you want to have the whole set, then, absolutely go for it. But it's more just it's a deeper issue, and it's a removal from, I think, a true appreciation of what it is. And I think that, buy a Rolex if in 2023, if you're ready to own a Rolex, if you can truly afford to own a Rolex. Don't compromise something else in your life just to have a Rolex on your wrist.
absolutely.
Buy the
Absolutely.
one that you can afford and enjoy that. And as Lewis said, Rolex, and this is by no means any sort of financial advice, but generally a Rolex is reasonably safe money, so you're always going to be able to sell it for something, and buy the next one when the next stage of your life comes in. And I think that's the important thing to remember, is that buy a Rolex and enjoy it. Well, we've just lost Lewis, ladies and gentlemen. You can see the beautiful test pattern on my
Yeah,
left
that's
here.
I'm gonna blame myself, but also blame my staff that my camera died, and they left the camera on over the weekend, which is great. So I've had it charged up. So let me figure out an alternative, and I'll be back with you.
Excellent. Well, we can, in the meantime, put in a still of Lewis on the left here and continue the conversation. Paused. Lewis, what did you want to do? Did you want to stop and come back, or there we go? Fantastic.
Hang on, hang on.
Solved it very
Let me
quickly.
set this up. So I will be sans good camera for a little while, guys. I'm sorry. I'll be operating on my webcam because the camera died. So I'm very sorry, but you'll get a nice little picture of my popped up microphone for the next 15 minutes or so. So I'm sorry, guys. That's technical difficulties on my part.
No drama. It's makes for a little bit of excitement in our.
But I think, like, going off what you're saying, like, it's right. One of the biggest pieces of advice I always give to people looking to buy Rolex is don't overextend yourself. If let's say you want to buy a Submariner and it's going to cost you $17,000 to $20,000, is $17,000 to $20,000 going to hurt you? If the answer is yes, don't buy it. There's plenty of other watches out there. Like, you go and get yourself a Seamaster. It's probably a technically better watch than a new. Like, a new Seamaster is probably a better watch than a new Submariner. So grab that if that's within your budget and it's going to make you feel good. But if the answer is no, it's not going to hurt me at all. Hell yeah, go buy the Rolex. Feels awesome. Rolexes are great. Like,
you know what I'm going to say next too, other than the door opening in the back was not a ghost, it was my dog. Tudor. Just look at Tudor.
right. Yeah,
Like,
across the hall.
Owned by the same company, now doing in-house movements, which are basically made in the factory next door to the Rolex factory with very shared knowledge. Look, from a design point of view, very, very similar. Something different if you want to have something different to a Rolex, the snowflake hands, square indices, all that kind of stuff. Its own super cool pedigree, being used by various militaries around the world, most notably, I guess, the Marine Nationale. Super, super cool. And if affordability is an issue, and value is an issue, which it is increasingly for everybody at every level, look at a Tudor. Absolutely fantastic value. And I've owned several Rolexes over time. I don't have one at the moment. I have a couple of Tudors, and I've got to say, I get basically the same wrist pleasure out of having one on as I do as a Rolex. And that's not an indictment of Rolex, but a big up of Tudor. So, something well worth considering. In
I noticed on that point, I've done similar. I did similar. I throughout that hyped period of 2022, I didn't have a Rolex in my personal collection. I mean, I had my Air King from my father that we spoke about when we first met, which is a 1989, 1990 Air King. It's an old piece that was an heirloom, basically, in my family. I didn't have one, so I went from collecting Rolexes and building up the ladder, as people do, and I had a Yacht Master. There's a two-tone Yacht Master black dial, rose gold, beautiful watch, and I sold it. And when that hype came out, I kept saying to people, I was like, I can't keep playing this game and chasing the next one, because what happens is the values kept going through the roof. I'd buy one at say 15 grand, and within 2 weeks it's worth 22. You're like, well, I'd rather have the 6-7 grand. So I ended up selling out of it and went, I can't do this. And I ended up just going out and buying watches that made me happy. Harlef Buchera, buy compacts annual calendars. I had reversos and just niche, quirky things that I loved. I had so much more enjoyment out of that. And it wasn't until the prices came back down this year that I bought Rolexes again. And I bought my President. I've got this Submariner. Like, this is where I think in 2023, going back to the sort of the main topic, is a really, really good time to buy the Rolex you've been looking at for the last 2 years. The prices came down to a point that we saw prior to the hike, prior to that ridiculous point in sort of April, May, June 2022, where everything was stupidly expensive. We're now at the point where we were before that, where the trend had gone up and it had continued to go up, and then it spiked massively. But it's now gone back to where it was before the spike, and it's stabilized again, which is perfect for if you want a Submariner and you don't want to play the silly AD game of spend 20 grand on Breitlings you're going to lose half your money on to get onto the list for a sub. Just go and buy the sub if that's what you wanted. Because right now, yes, you're going to pay above list for a new sub, but it's not stupidly above list. It's not double list, which is where it was. It's a couple of grand over. And I think that's a nice little sweet spot if you want a modern Rolex. Now's a good time. But, caveating again, if you want a Rolex in 2023, I would seriously say start turning down the AD. If they offer you a diamond dial 36mm date just in two-tone that you don't want, but you want a Submariner, don't buy the fucking watch. Guys, you are going to lose money now, because that's how it always used to be, and that's how it's come back to. It always used to be that those watches, you flipped them out, you lost a couple grand, the dealer would sell them at retail or slightly below retail, you'd get on the list for your sub. Stop doing it. Save that 2 or 3 grand you're about to lose and buy the Submariner day one, and teach the AD the lesson that, no, you can't just flick me any old shit because you need to clear your cabinet. No, I want a Submariner. Hey, a Submariner's 3 or 4 grand above list right now. Just go and buy one, because if you start buying the Oruses, the Breitlings, the other shit they're going to sell you, the money you've just lost in selling it is the difference between buying it new, grey. It's a perfect time to get the watch that you want, is 2023.
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly for the new market. I think there is also the opportunity, I think, coming up as, we seem to be entering a bit of a shaky time again with banks and this and that and market worries and all this sort of stuff. I think you'll start to see on the sort of good, the properly used second-hand market, you'll start to see some people who are wanting to liquefy a little bit, and I think there will be opportunities to buy secondhand very, very well. And I think keep an eye out. And obviously, both Lewis and I can help people find watches, and that's certainly not the purpose of our discussions, the purpose of this podcast at all, to promote that in any sort of explicit way. But hot tip for watch collectors who are looking to do things themselves, the type of people who might buy cars privately rather than from dealers and all that. Keep a really good eye out on Chrono and eBay and all that, because I think that there are going to be people with some older watches, 5 years old, 10 years old, who want to liquefy a bit. And those watches, to me, represent fantastic value because they're nowhere near new list. They're not new watches. Maybe you'll get a box, maybe you won't. But if you're buying a watch, if it's a one watch collection watch or a 1 or 2 watch collection watch, that really this is a long-term dream, and this is going to be the watch you plan to wear for 20 years or 30 years, then look at that market, because it's a really, really good market. There's some very, very good value there, and there's the bubble did have flow on into that, and I think that'll be less and less as people can just go in and buy new ones more and more without paying arms and legs. So keep an eye on that market, and I think you'll find some really good value there as well.
The prices of like vintage Datejusts, it used to be like 1601 Datejusts were to a penny. They were the entry level Rolex. That was what you got. You got a 1601. You paid $3,000-$4,000. It was a good purchase, and you get an awesome watch for that. And then all of a sudden, they're $9,000-$10,000 for a 1601, like a 1960s date, just on a strap, like bracelet's gone. Don't know if it's been serviced. There's a lot of money. They've come back down, and they're in that like $5,000-$7,000 range now, which is a good little sweet spot for that, because you're getting a watch that will stand the test of time, both aesthetically and mechanically. And as long as you can trust that what you're getting is what you're actually getting, they're great. And you find that a lot of those watches are coming from, like Ben says, they're coming from collectors rather than dealers. Some dealers, obviously, I mean, we have a selection that's, we have a selection of almost anything, but it's not our bread and butter is 1601s. Like that is a nice little personal buyer, personal seller sweet spot, and for a great Datejust. If you're looking at 5-digit reference, 16013s, 16610s in the subs, now's a really good time, because what we saw is that all the flippers, all the guys who were the crypto money guys, were buying new. I want new Starbucks. I want new Hulk. I want new. And so when the market dropped, they just liquidated as quickly as they could. And so now the time on the new watches is you're not going to get those deals. You're not going to get the like, oh shit, I'm on my ass, crypto's tanked, I need this money out now. What you're getting is a more stable market. But the flow on from that, like Ben says, is going to be, and has been and is being, the 1601s, the 5-digit references. They're such good value right now. Like 5-digit reference Submariners, free ceramic, aluminium bezels. They're one of the most comfortable sports watches you can own. I mean, the bracelet and the clasp, sorry, not the bracelet. The bracelet's good. The clasp is a bit shitty for a Rolex. Like it's not great. You want the sort of the modern style clasp with the slide lock. That's the best clasp for a sub. But for almost everything else being the same, that's 5-digit reference, 16610s, 14060s, no dates and dates. They're fantastic. 2-liner subs, like that's pretty much where I'd be trying to buy a Rolex right now, is in that 5-digit sweet spot, unless you specifically want something new and it's no longer massively above list.
Yeah, they are. They're just talking about the bracelet and the clasp. I mean, I've always had a hairy wrist, and some bracelets, you can get the pinch and pull. And as you say, there's some sort of witchcraft going on in how they crafted those, because I've never
Rolex bullshittery.
so comfortable. They're so comfortable, and just the case, it's so flat for its size, and no, they're a magnificent watch, and so highly recommended to anybody. And look, there are so many. I mean, one of the watches that we never talk about, and it's a really old one, is the 30s Tiger case Princes with the up and down sort of doctor's watch configuration. Like, there's so much interesting Rolex out there. Like a lot of our conversation today has been around the market as opposed to the watches. And, there's Rolex is a fantastic brand. It's, the madness has come off. So, I guess for me, a summary would be, yeah, absolutely. Go out, buy one. I think they're amazing. Careful what you buy. And quick footnote there, they're also the most faked watches, so be really careful. That's the advantage of dealing with a dealer or a knowledgeable trader is, you've got some expertise behind people checking it out. So do be careful. But the overall answer is yes, but be careful how you buy, and buy right.
That's it. And for me, guys, it's if you've wanted one new and it was too expensive for you, now go out and buy it, because you're going to actually save that money you would have lost by just paying the premium. So if you want the new one, now's a really good time. I don't know how long that will last. I don't know whether it's going to go up or down. I'm not a fortune teller. I couldn't tell you. Honestly, I don't care either way. I'd probably prefer it to go down a little bit, just as a collector and as a hobbyist and enjoying the hobby. But I couldn't tell you it's going to go either way. But if you want a newer Rolex, now's a really good time to do that. And now's probably the best time we've had in a very long time to buy those 5-digit neo vintage 90s, early 2000s models, because they're at a really, really nice little sweet spot. And like Ben says, explore the catalog. Like, go back in history, go and look at the Cellini ranges from the past. Go and look at the Tigers. Go look at all that stuff, because there's some really cool things. You want a bubble back? Go find a bubble back. Like, awesome watches in the Rolex catalog, and 2023 could be a really, really good time to buy one.
Indeed. So, guys, keep an eye out. Next episode from us will be our review of Watches and Wonders. No doubt there'll be plenty of watches, and
do you have a sneak peek?
Maybe a little bit of wondering what happened, what the hell happened.
Let's hit Ben's wonder. We'll do one each, right? What am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? A prediction. Give me one prediction for Watches and Wonders 2023 from Rolex.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my comment of a couple of weeks back. I reckon that none of the speculative mock-ups that people did on social media will be appearing from Rolex at Watches and Wonders, and I think that they will. The biggest surprises out of Rolex will be commercial rather than horological. So it'll be they're cancelling a model, or they're introducing a model, or they'll do that bloody left crown GMT, like something weird, rather than
so give us a watch. What watch are we going to see? What watch are we going to see released or announced?
From Rolex.
From Rolex, because that's today's topic, Rolex, right? He's gone very, very quiet, guys. While he searches for Rolex models. The hater has become the fortune teller.
I don't think they'll introduce anything new. I think that it'll be there might be a couple of colours. I can't even speculate what those colours would be, but I think that there will be. I don't think we'll see a lot new from them this time.
I'm going to actually give an answer then. I'll give an answer. You can sit there and be quiet and
I'll sit on the fence.
That's fine. So, two things I think will happen. I think we will see a return of the black bezel GMT. It's been discontinued for a little while now, and I think we're going to see a return. Now, either that's going to be, it'll be in a precious metal of some kind, probably in two-tone, but I think that's coming back. There'll be a black bezel GMT. As a side to that, I really think they might even increase the case size to 41, or even go down to 39. I think that the GMT being at 40 interferes too much in that catalog, and I think they're gonna push it up to 41 to match the sub, or knock it down to 39 to meet a hole they don't have. So that's one thing. It's that black ceramic GMT. I think it's coming back. Now, the other one that I'm not sure will happen, but I kind of hope, and I do hear some rumors sort of behind the scenes from Rolex people, is titanium. We saw it with the monstrosity deep sea thing they did, the challenge thing.
Yeah.
I really think there's something titanium coming. My gut tells me Yacht Master, because I think there was a prototype floating out there a little while ago from a guy sailing. So my gut tells me titanium Yacht Master, but I really think we're going to see titanium in a big way from Rolex in 2023. So they're my two. And we'll see what happens.
I think I agree with the size thing. That actually crossed my mind in my moment of silent contemplation there, is that you might see a size. I'd predict reduction. I think you're right there. I think, one of the models, they'll either introduce, sort of a side-by-side, and you'll be able to get it in a 41 and a 39 or whatever. But I think that, Tudor did it with the Pelagos 39. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw, Rolex giving a similar offering. But yeah,
I'd be very surprised if they did that. I'd be like, that would knock me over if they released the same watch in 2 different sizes like that in a sports collection for men's sizing, because they do the ladies sizes like 37s and whatnot in the Yacht Masters, and then the full size. I'd be stunned if they offered essentially a ladies size GMT Master 2. That would really, really be something cool.
Indeed. Well, from both of us, as always, loving the comments and support. I just want to add a footnote on whose collection last week got the winning comments this time. So we're one apiece. So we probably have to do another collection to see, who and what comes out best of 3. But so thank you for that. But do continue, because it gives us both a thrill to know that you like what we're doing. Please do rate and comment and review the pod and share it, because it, again, you've heard it a million times before on all sorts of different podcasts, but it really does help. And so from me, Ben, at Fine Watches Australia, at Fine Watches AU on Instagram, thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Until next time, enjoy.